This opportunity to slow down. And as we always do, just beginning with choosing a posture that feels supportive for you. And some days that means getting a little cozier, leaning back, finding some extra support, grabbing a blanket. And some mornings you might even find yourself that you need to stand, you need a little bit more alertness. So just a reminder that there's not a particular way that we need to sit or should sit, really just an opportunity to check in with your body. And very often we find a familiar posture. Maybe you're finding yourself in a similar space. You have a certain chair that you like to sit in. Just look for those things that are familiar and supportive, but also give yourself permission to make adjustments as needed. You're welcome at any point to either close your eyes or set your gaze downward. Just bringing your attention a bit more internal. And there's no rush to find a focal point right away. There's no rush to start noticing your breath right away. The more familiar your meditation, usually the more familiar it is to get into that rhythm of finding your focal point. But truly part of this practice is just giving yourself permission to slow down. There's no rush to slow down. Because very often we get into these productivity ranges. It's okay, now I'm meditating, I'm going to do it like this. And then the next thing comes, and I'm going to do that. It's this opportunity to just land for a moment. So give us some silence here. What does it feel like to just land? Just noticing different sounds, maybe noticing your breath. Maybe there's something else that's capturing your attention in this moment. Just curious, what am I feeling? What types of sensations? It's temperature, touch, sound, scent, movement, stillness. Just notice as you slow down, it's what comes into your sensory awareness, what comes through your thought landscape, what's landing in your emotional field. And we're not trying to seek anything to fix or change. We're not trying to set our attention and keep it. We're just noticing. It's how our attention moves, how our thoughts wander, how our breath is consistently always there. It's just this bringing our attention into the present and noticing many different experiences to be felt in the present. And it can be so helpful to hone concentration for a while. So that chosen focal point in our meditation is important. So if we don't choose a focal point, our mind will just go. Very often it goes to familiar thought patterns, sometimes helpful, sometimes less than helpful. So this choosing of a physical focal point within our body just gives us the opportunity to anchor back in again and again and again. Just notice here your breath. And the breath is a common anchor, not only because it's always with us, but because there's change within it. We might also choose the sensation in our hands. It might feel steady and stable, but then eventually the sensation changes, especially as you bring attention to it. Just notice how you can shift your attention from your breath to your hands. The attentional focus might be fleeting. You're like, oh yeah, hands. And then all of a sudden the next thought comes in. But just notice here for a moment your hands themselves. So, what are they touching? What kind of texture is being felt? Is there a sense of temperature? Can you notice the weight of your hands? And whatever part of your body your hands are resting on, can you notice that part of your body receiving the weight of your hands? Perhaps feeling the temperature of your hands through that body part. Maybe your hands are resting on some other surface. Just notice, is there a softness? Is there a firmness? And in that way, just exploring these sensations. It's also how we explore the mind. It's with gentleness, with curiosity. And we may have noticed somewhere in there a judgment. Ooh, I really like the temperature of my hands. Ooh, my hands are too cold or too hot. And those judgment is not a bad thing. Excuse me. Until judgment takes us off into something that's less than helpful. And so all of this really flows together, just this focal point of noticing some physical sensation. And we're just returning there as often as needed, and with curiosity instead of judgment when possible. And curiosity lends us into a bit of kindness, a bit of gentleness for ourselves. We'll spend a little time in silence again. You're welcome to keep focus on your hands. Hands can be helpful because they're so sensitive. If your attention moves, you just simply give your leg a squeeze and notice that sensation. If you're feeling sleepy, you can bring your first finger and thumb together. Just notice that pressure change, the sensation at your fingertip and thumb. And so it's not about just being still, just utilizing the tools like your hands to help modulate your attention, to help bring your attention back. Just curious awareness, just noticing sensation. Almost invariably, our mind moves. So just notice again your hands. That's not because what's in your thoughts is not important, but because your hands are still important. the sensation you're feeling. But just curious. So maybe moving your hands if you need a little attentional support. Just drawing your hands across each other, palm to palm, squeezing a leg, rubbing finger pads together, touching a loved one, a pet, holding a cup of coffee. That's right. All of these things help bring us back to present. It isn't about being perfectly still. Just curious, what does the present feel like? When I'm lost in thought, how do I come back to my body? Then take a moment and just notice how your attention moves. Just consciously shifting your attention from your hands to your breath. And as you shift your attention to your breath, there are parts of your breath that suddenly become more obvious. And they've been right there this whole time. But our attention is like a flashlight. Suddenly we can see so much more clearly when we turn our attention towards something. Just noticing how you're able to do so. You don't have to force your attention. It's just this invitation, hands to breath. And in this simple choice making, this simple check in with our body, we're utilizing these wise 8 limbs of yoga. This concept we've been working with this month. We'll continue to work with this concept. But asana, the third limb of yoga, that means to sit or to pose. And it's moment to moment, right? You've chosen a posture you're resting in today. Sitting, standing, driving, stillness, whatever it is. So choosing to be in this posture. That's part of the process, choosing to come back to your body again and again and again. Just noticing hands, noticing breath. From that physical sensation, noticing our posture. So we can start to get into the more subtleties of sensation, like the breath itself. To sit upright requires a certain amount of effort. And to breathe deeply requires a certain amount of effort. We're also looking for the moments of ease. So just notice. Do your hands feel supported? Can you soften them just 2 to 3% more? Sometimes even stretching your fingers and then releasing them again gives you a bit more of an ease just in your hands. And then watch your body soften as you exhale. Just moving from our physical posture and noticing all of that sensation to noticing breath. The subtle shifts in movement. And specifically seeking that little relaxive quality as you exhale. So spending a bit of time here, just observing your breath, feeling it move through you, and noticing these shifts and changes in sensation as you breathe. Moment by moment present awareness, utilizing your hands to notice sensation, or bringing your attention to your breath, experiencing those subtle shifts and changes of breath, seeking to just enjoy those little moments of release when you exhale. It's moment to moment. It's just this breath. And in our meditation, we have all of these presencing tools. Many of those tools exist just within our body. When you bring attention to hands, suddenly you're present again. When you're feeling a little agitated or a little sleepy, giving your legs a squeeze. This not only gives you an attentional focus, noticing that new sensation of the squeeze itself, but also remembering that there's support in that. I'm doing this for myself to support me. Rather than sometimes we get in our mind that we're judging this meditation as good or it's bad, this feeling is good or it's bad. It's all just information. And getting a little squeeze from your hands. It's a reminder of how you support yourself, how your body is right here taking care of the breath, no matter how many times your mind has moved away from it. And there's a deep wisdom in the Yoga Sutras, the way that they're laid out, beginning with our physical form, and then going to this more subtle experience of breathing. And eventually the more subtle experience of just a sense experience. And pratyahara is the third of the steps that we're working within, the third, fourth, and fifth limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga. And this pratyahara, it's oftentimes translated as sense withdrawal. When we look at this word, pratyahara, And this word prati, it means withdrawal. It's the simplest form that we practice almost every day. It's closing your eyes or softening your gaze. It's removing a bit of your visual sense to enliven other senses. There's also this withdrawal. Sometimes we get stuck in a thought. We're just trying to unhook from it so that we can notice other experiences happening in the present. This little withdrawing from our thinking mind and paying attention to our hands, suddenly the sensation in your hands becomes more obvious, more tangible, more real. And the second part of that word, it's in its simplest form translated as food or nourishment. So, this practice, instead of being translated as withdrawal of food or withdrawal of nourishment, it's this idea that we're withdrawing from intake. Intake is another translation of the second part of that word, withdrawing from intake. And in many ways, that's just a big part of the meditation practice is just withdrawing from all of the things that draw our attention for just a few moments so we can pay attention to our own needs. So we can pay attention to how we're responding to the world, sometimes reacting to the world. And sometimes withdrawing from everything just so we can rest for a moment. So our bodies, our spirits, our minds need rest and not just sleep, but those little spaces at the very bottom of a breath where you can just notice stillness. That's its own kind of beautiful rest. It's not about forcing your thoughts to be still, just like we're not trying to force our body to be still. It's just this invitation to withdraw in moments. I get hooked on a thought. It feels gripping. It feels sticky. It's hard to let that thought go. And the more I try to push the thought away, the stickier it gets. And instead, it's just this, can I just practice unhooking for a moment? And in that unhooking, I'm no longer giving that thought my attention. I'm just inviting my attention back. What are my hands feeling? And perhaps even giving myself some positive accolades that I'm not taking in new information right now. So just giving myself a moment of rest. I don't have to figure out how I'm responding to that email right now. All I'm doing right now is responding to the sensation in my body. When I think that thought, what happens to my jaw? I'm noticing my mind is wandering. Can I just squeeze my legs again for a moment? Just noticing that contact from hand to leg. Just curious and curious and curious. Moment by moment, present awareness. So, what are you experiencing right now? How is your breath moving? What sensation can you feel in your hands? Just presencing, coming back to the present again and again. So with as much kindness as you can. Just curious about the present. In this practice of withdrawing, it's not so that we can withdraw so much that we're hiding. It's to find that space within us that gives us resourcing, a space within us that gives us a little bit of space between stimulus and response. And there's so much stimulus in the world, and a lot of it is painful to feel and see and hear. It's not about pushing that away. It's about finding resourcing within yourself, these moments of respite, so you can refill and refuel. Not because we're trying to steel ourselves against pain, but to be able to open ourselves up to hold everything that comes. And because all of us have a lot in our lives, it's a lot to feel, a lot to experience, a lot of responsibilities. Taking these moments where there's a little bit less of the allotness of the world. It's this tiny moment of withdrawal for yourself, so you can experience the joy of just having sensation in your fingertips. So you can experience that softening that comes when you really notice an exhale. So that we can tap in, even if just for a moment, to the present, where everything is experienced as it is, rather than through these thought patterns or lenses of the mind. It's just pure presence. Just this breath right here. And I'll read just this tiny passage from the author Lisa Magnum. It's just a beautiful expression of our practice. She says, "Time is now. The river is now. This moment, this breath between us, the space between your heartbeats, the moment before you blink, the instant a thought flashes through your mind. It is everything that is around us, life, energy, flowing, endlessly flowing, carrying you from then to now to tomorrow. But listen here. You can hear the music of it all. You can feel the passage of time. This moment, this breath between us." And with that, I'll invite you to bring your hands into any closing habits or practices. Again, you might just leave your hands right where they are, just noticing the contact of them. We'll end with the loving kindness phrases, just repeating them back if they make sense for you, offering yourself your own well-wishing. May I remember to slow down and notice my breath. May I remember the innate goodness of my breath. May I give myself permission to withdraw and rest when action is needed? May I choose to move with ease and peace. And whenever you feel complete, you can open your eyes, find movement in your body. And as always, it's taking a moment to thank yourself for showing up.